What's going on, everyone? Welcome back to another episode of the JT Sports Podcast. I'm your host, JT. Gotta put the dreads down for this episode, man. You want to know why? Because these are our 2023-2024 NFL record predictions, the pride and joy of the JT Sports Podcast. We pride ourselves on having the most accurate record predictions, and if we don't get the records right, we at least want to get the playoff teams right. Before we begin, if you haven't already, make sure that you are subscribed to the channel. We go live every day, Monday through Friday at 5 p.m. Eastern time. So make sure that you have post notifications and video notifications turned on so you don't miss a live stream and a new video when it drops. Listen to the audio versions of the JT Sports Podcast. We are available not just on YouTube, but you can find us on all podcasting platforms. Apple, Google, Spotify, Amazon, wherever you get your podcast from, you can find the JT Sports Podcast. Follow us on all of our social media platforms. You can find us on Instagram at JT Sports _ and on Twitter at JT Sports __. Once again, you can follow us on Twitter at JT Sports _ and on Instagram at JT Sports _. If you enjoy today's episode of JT Sports Live, make sure that you go ahead, rate us 5 stars. We are trying to get to 100 5-star reviews before the start of the season. So go ahead, rate us 5 stars. Apple, Spotify, wherever you get your podcast from, go ahead and leave us with a 5-star review if you enjoy. It's time for my favorite time of the NFL offseason, NFL predictions. And NFL predictions are the pride and joy of the JT Sports Podcast. We pride ourselves on having the most accurate record predictions. And if we can't get the records accurate, we at least want to get the playoff teams accurate. Let's start off with the AFC Conference, which is a bloodbath going into this season. There are a lot of great teams in this conference, and we're going to start off with the toughest division in the NFL this year, the AFC North. I think the Ravens are going to have the best record in this division at 14-3. I think they're going to win the AFC North this year. You give Lamar Jackson some legitimate weapons at receiver now, and Zay Flowers, OBJ, Nelson Aguilar is a good depth piece. We can't forget about Rashad Bateman. He's shown flashes at times. Isaiah Likely, Mark Andrews. There are just a lot of options for Lamar Jackson to throw the football to this season. And defensively, minus their pass rush, they should have one of the best defenses in the NFL this year. Now, the reason why I tell you minus the pass rush is because we don't know how much production the Ravens are going to get from their pass rush this season. Justin Houston, they didn't bring him back. JPP, they didn't re-sign him neither. So they're banking on David Ojabo and Odafe Oweh being able to step up and having breakout seasons for them. Now, you look at the Cincinnati Bengals, I got them coming in second place, 12-5. I think the Bengals are going to get out to a slow start this year. Joe Burrow went down with a calf injury, which is going to keep him out for the remainder of the preseason and training camp pretty much. So when he gets to week 1 of the NFL season, we could see a little bit of rust. And maybe the Cincinnati Bengals start this season out slow like they have a tendency to do. The Steelers, I got them finishing with a 11-6 record this year. This is a really talented football team. And if they played in any other division, not named the AFC North or AFC East, they probably could win the AFC South. Or they could win the AFC West potentially. I think this team is that good. They do have a roster that's good enough to compete in the AFC North for the division title. It just depends on how Kenny Pickett looks in year 2 under Matt Canada. And Matt Canada is my biggest concern for the Steelers offense this year. I think that he possibly could hold back Kenny Pickett, and how good this offense could be this year in 2023 could be potentially capped with Matt Canada's play calling. But the reason why Mike Tomlin decided to bring back Matt Canada for another season is because the key to a young quarterback being successful is having stability on the coaching staff, and that's what you get by retaining Matt Canada as your OC. So there are a lot of pros and cons to retaining Matt Canada. I do think that this offense should improve, but we don't know how much this offense could get held back by Matt Canada being the offensive coordinator. I got the Cleveland Browns finishing at 6-11, last place in the AFC North. I don't really feel that strongly that the Browns are going to have a great season this year. Deshaun Watson is going to have an offseason that's going to have no distractions. He's going to have all the opportunity in the world to really get to know his teammates, get to better understand Kevin Stefanski's playbook and offense. But their run defense, is that going to improve under new defensive coordinator Jim Schwartz? I don't know. They brought in Dalvin Tomlinson in free agency. They signed him to a lofty contract. They also brought in Tristan Hill, Maurice Hurst to bring in some more depth on the interior defensive line. But I just don't think the Browns' run defense is going to be all that improved from how they performed last season. And when you're playing in the AFC North that has three teams that are all capable of being able to run the football at a really high level, the Bengals got Joe Mixon, the Ravens got Lamar, plus a really good group of running backs. The Steelers got Najee Harris and an improved offensive line. So I don't see how the Browns' run defense is going to be able to slow down some of the better rushing offenses in this division this year. I just don't think the Browns are going to be that good this season. I think they're going to be in a lot of close games, but I think they're going to lose a good handful of those matchups. I don't know if this run defense is going to improve. I still have reservations about Kevin Stefanski as a head coach and how Deshaun Watson fits in his system. The AFC East was a really tough division to predict for me. I got the Dolphins and New York Jets both finishing with 13-4 records. I think they're going to be tied for the AFC East title, even though I think the Miami Dolphins are going to win the AFC East over the New York Jets. In this scenario, I think it'll probably be due to a tiebreaker. The Dolphins, them having a 13-4 record may be really surprising to you, but it shouldn't. They have one of the best rosters in the NFL. Their offensive line isn't as bad as what it was last year. It probably should make some slight improvements, but that's all I'm expecting from the offensive line is slight improvement. But if you can get over the concerns that you have with this offensive line and look at the other positions on this Miami Dolphins team, they're one of the best teams entering the upcoming NFL season. I mean, arguably the best receiving core in the NFL, Jalen Waddle, Tyreek Hill, Tua Tagovailoa. I think that he is a top 10 quarterback. Some people would disagree with that, but when he's healthy, I think he's one of the better quarterbacks in the league. You got a really good group of running backs, and that's my biggest question for the Miami Dolphins and Mike McDaniel. Are they going to put more emphasis on establishing the run game? Because there were times last season where the Miami Dolphins got one-dimensional on offense, and it wasn't because the run game got shut down, but it's because Mike McDaniel seemed to forget that the run game was available to him. So for the Dolphins, I would love to see them putting way more emphasis on establishing the run game this year. Raheem Mostert is really underrated, one of the better running backs in the NFL when it comes to making things happen after contact, really fast. So I think the Dolphins are going to go 13-4 and win the AFC East. The New York Jets, I got them at 13-4 like the Dolphins as well because this is a really good roster top to bottom. There are concerns with the offensive line, but I think this offensive line should be really solid. You got Connor McGovern and Joe Tittman who are going to be fighting for the right to be the starting center on the New York Jets offensive line. Aaron Rodgers takes over at quarterback. And even if Aaron Rodgers isn't the same player that he once was when he won back-to-back MVPs not too long ago, he still should give the Jets way better quarterback play than what they've gotten from that position in over a decade. I mean, you got to remember, the last time the Jets went to an AFC Conference Championship game, Mark Sanchez was their quarterback. Aaron Rodgers most definitely should be better than Mark Sanchez, Sam Darnold, Ryan Fitzpatrick, and whoever else has been taking snaps at quarterback over the last couple of years for the New York Jets. 12-5 is my record prediction for the Bills this season. Buffalo fans are going to be a little upset with me that I have them winning only 12 games. A good amount of people believe this is a team that could end up winning 13 games, maybe more. But my problems with the Buffalo Bills stem with the locker room. I don't think that this Stephon Diggs situation was being blown out of proportion. I do think that there is some legitimate controversy in that Buffalo Bills locker room. You got to remember that Stephon Diggs has a reputation for being a diva. This isn't a one-off situation with him. I could get if Stephon Diggs was somebody who didn't have an extensive history with being problematic in the locker room, but this is the kind of player that Stephon Diggs is. Really talented, one of the best receivers in the league, but he's a diva. And having these kinds of players on your team can cost you a shot at winning a Super Bowl. You don't see teams winning championships with players that always need to have the ball in their hands, or players that need more touches. Players that are championship caliber are the ones that are willing to make sacrifices. Guys who don't care about what their numbers look like. They only care about the W in the win column. Those are the kind of guys that you want on the championship football team. And having Stephon Diggs on the Buffalo Bills roster, I kind of have some concerns about how he's going to impact the chemistry of this offense going into this season. And when they get to the playoffs, this defense under Sean McDermott, you can make Leslie Frazier out to be the scapegoat all you want to, but I mean, this defense doesn't show up in the playoffs. They didn't show up against the Cincinnati Bengals last year. They didn't show up against the Kansas City Chiefs the last 2 times they matched up against them in the postseason. So I don't have a lot of faith in the Buffalo Bills defense in the playoffs. This defense looks really good on paper. They're going to look really good throughout the regular season, but I more so care about what this defense does in the biggest games and the biggest moments that take place in January, and oftentimes they come up small. Now, this defensive line is going to be really good. A lot of people are really overlooking this Bills defensive line. Gregory Rousseau, AJ Epinesa, both of those guys were really productive in 2022. They could be even better this season, especially Gregory Rousseau. Look for him to be somebody who potentially could leapfrog himself into being a 10-sack guy on a yearly basis. Really athletic. He's improved and gotten better every single season since he was drafted by the Bills. And then you got Kara Elam, who had a little bit of an up-and-down rookie season. We're going to see what he's going to do, but overall, this is still a really talented defense, a really talented offense. You got Josh Allen. So as long as you have Josh Allen and the players that you have on the defense side of the football, you're not going to be bad enough to miss the playoffs like some people are predicting. I don't think the Bills miss out on the postseason this year. This is still one of the best teams, not just in the AFC, but in the NFL overall. They just have some locker room concerns that kind of worry me about how far they can go in the playoffs. New England comes in at 6-11. This really hurt me, because prior to these predictions, I was saying that the Patriots could be a 7-8 win team, but the AFC is just way too tough this year, and they don't got enough firepower. Even if they do sign Dalvin Cook, it isn't going to do too much for the Patriots in terms of where they rank in the division. And what's even more scarier, if you're a Patriots fan, is that even if you sign DeAndre Hopkins and Dalvin Cook, you probably still would have been the worst team in this division still. Bill Belichick Is it going to work with him and Bill O'Brien? I believe it is, but how good is this offense going to be with Bill O'Brien calling the plays? We really don't know. All we know is that this offense will undoubtedly be better than what it was under Matt Patricia, but to the extent of how better is it going to be? Now, we know this offense isn't going to stink. This should at least, or at worst, be a below average offense that should rank around, 17th, 18th, 20th. But I think realistically, this could be a top 16, top 15 offense. And you may be like, JT, why do you feel that way about New England? Well, the offensive line, I think, should take a step up. The wide receiving core doesn't surprise anybody. Everybody looks at that receiving core and it's like, yeah, it's probably not going to be that good. You re-signed Parker, which I don't understand why you did that. If you were Bill Belichick, he's not really a great receiver. He's a good 50-50 ball guy. He's a good third or second option, but I don't think he deserves the kind of money that he's getting paid right now. And you look at Keyshawn Boutte, Demario Douglas, those are rookie wide receivers that they have a lot of confidence in that could end up having a little bit of an impact on this offense. But overall, I think this offense could be solid for two reasons. First, Bill O'Brien is really good calling plays and he puts a lot of emphasis on running the football. And two, Mac Jones is a really good fit in Bill O'Brien's system. What does Mac Jones do well? Make good decisions with the football. He's a pretty accurate passer, and that's what you need to have if you want to have success in Bill O'Brien's system. He wants a quarterback that has high football IQ and has great accuracy inside the short intermediate areas of the field. Now, defensively, this should be a really good defense. All right. But even though this defense is going to be good, I don't know if it's going to be great to be able to slow down these offenses of the Miami Dolphins, the New York Jets, and the Buffalo Bills. And the thing with the Patriots defense is that it's going to be good, but it's not going to be great. And you're going to need a great defense to be able to slow down an offense like the Miami Dolphins, which is pretty much the fastest in the NFL. How are you going to be able to keep up with that? What about the New York Jets with Aaron Rodgers? If they figure it out on the offensive line, what's going to happen? Buffalo Bills, their offense gives the New England Patriots defense a lot of fits every time they play. So I think the New England Patriots are going to finish in last place in the AFC East. Hopefully they can end up performing a lot better. I do hold Bill Belichick in high regard. I don't think he's one of the best coaches in the NFL. I don't think he's top 3, but I definitely still do view him as a fringe top 5 head coach, top 10 head coach at worst. But we'll see how this season goes for New England. AFC West, I got Kansas City winning this division. Once again, this is the most talented team in this division. This also is the most well-coached team in this division. You got Andy Reid, Patrick Mahomes. I don't think there's any way Kansas City doesn't win this division unless the Denver Broncos and Sean Payton just really turn it up a notch. And I got the Denver Broncos winning 10 games, but 10 games may not be enough to guarantee you a spot in the postseason this year, at least on the AFC side of things, because the AFC has way too many great quarterbacks. And if you don't have a great quarterback, you need to have a great head coach and a great team. And when you look at the Denver Broncos, they have that. I think their team is really underrated. This offensive line should improve with the addition of Mike McGlinchey. You also are going to have Garrett Bowles coming back fully healthy this season. So when I look at the Denver Broncos, this offensive line was a huge problem last year. This offensive line hopefully should be improved. They are going to have Sean Payton being their head coach this season on the sidelines. This is one of the best offensive minds in the history of the NFL. And we seem to forget what Sean Payton did his final season with the New Orleans Saints. He went 9-8 with several different quarterbacks. Taysom Hill, Jameis Winston. You had Ian Book, Trevor Siemian, and the worst receiving core in the NFL that year for a team that had a winning record. If Sean Payton can go 9-8 with Marquez Callaway being his best receiver and having several different quarterbacks, then I'm pretty confident that he's going to be able to resurrect Russell Wilson's career. Now, how good is Russell Wilson going to be for the Broncos this season? We really don't know. We don't know if he's going to be anywhere close to what he was in Seattle, but if you're Sean Payton, you're at least hoping and you're confident that you can get 80 to 85% of Seattle Russell Wilson. And if you can get that, you should be able to be a 9-10 win team. I got them at 10-7. And if they can get better performance out of that defensive line that's been really good up to this point in training camp so far, maybe they could challenge Kansas City. Let's not forget, many people, a lot of people in the national media included, had the Broncos penciled in as their Super Bowl favorite heading into last year's NFL season around this time. And Russell Wilson, I don't think last season went as bad as what it did all because of him. I felt like the coaching held him back, and with better coaching, we're going to see Russell Wilson's play bounce back. The LA Chargers, I got them surprisingly coming in at 6-11, third place in the AFC West. I'm just not a big believer in Brandon Staley. Just keeping it 100. What has Brandon Staley done that has given Chargers fans confidence that this team is going to be able to not only live up to expectations, but make a deep playoff run? Nothing. They choked a 27-0 lead against the Jacksonville Jaguars in the wild card round. And you can make all the excuses about how the Chargers had to deal with all these injuries last year, but some of those injuries were due to poor roster management by Brandon Staley. This dude literally played Mike Williams and a couple of other starters in a meaningless game that didn't really affect playoff seeding for the Chargers, and they ended up getting injured. So for all you Chargers fans that want to use the whole, oh, we had injuries, you can kind of blame some of those injuries happening on Brandon Staley's poor roster management. He also is super aggressive in fourth down situations, which, I'm not going to say it's a complete negative about Brandon Staley, because you do got to have a little bit of aggressiveness when it comes to deciding to go for it on fourth down or not. But he's just a little bit way too aggressive. As a matter of fact, he's the definition of over-aggressive. And plus, he has a lot of reliance on analytics. And I think that analytics are cool and all when you use them in the proper context and you don't OD on the analytics. Brandon Staley is one of those coaches that ODs on analytics. Analytics drive a lot of his decisions, which is why oftentimes they backfire in big moments of games, because in big moments of games, you can't always leave decisions up to analytics. Some decisions just have to be based on the way the game is going. And Brandon Staley, I don't really think he does a very good job at knowing when to have a feel for keeping your offense on the field and going for it, or opting to take the 3 points. 6-11 is my record prediction for the LA Chargers this year. They did add Kellen Moore as their OC. This offense is going to be very good, but what about this defense? And the teams that the Chargers beat to get into the playoffs last year weren't really all that great, or didn't have great quarterback play. So I'm not a big believer in the LA Chargers this year. I do like their offense. I do love Justin Herbert, but I don't know how good that defense is going to be, even with J.C. Jackson being fully healthy this year. What has this defense shown under Brandon Staley? Their best performance was against the Miami Dolphins last year when they shut down Mike McDaniel and Tua Tagovailoa. But outside of that, I haven't seen anything that made me go, oh yeah, Brandon Staley is a great defensive-minded head coach. He's been the head coach of the LA Chargers for the last couple of years, and I've yet to see an elite defense. The Raiders are going to be in last place in the AFC West. I got them at 2-15. I think they are a dumpster fire waiting to happen going into this season. Their head coach is not good, Josh McDaniels. I think he's going to be one of the first coaches to end up getting the pink slip. And will he be the head coach for the Raiders for the whole entire season? I don't know. I think there's a chance that he could be fired around week 15, week 14. I think the Raiders are probably going to be in contention for tanking for Caleb Williams. Jimmy Garoppolo isn't a bad QB, but with the situation that he has in Las Vegas, I don't know if he's going to have the same amount of success there that he had with Kyle Shanahan and the 49ers. One thing that he always had with the 49ers is a very good offensive line. The Las Vegas Raiders have the polar opposite of that. Their run game, we don't know if Josh Jacobs is going to play or not. And even if he does, I still think this offense isn't going to be all that great. I think that this is going to be a top 13, top 14 offense at best. Jimmy Garoppolo, this is somebody who doesn't really rise to the occasions and big games necessarily all the time. He's not really consistent. When you look at Patrick Mahomes, Justin Herbert, you know what you're going to get from them on a week-to-week basis. You don't know what you're going to get out of Jimmy Garoppolo. He could play good one game. The next week, he could play average. The week after that, he could play great. And the week after that, he could play terrible. You don't know what to expect out of Jimmy Garoppolo. And additionally, he's an injury-prone player. He's the definition of fragile luggage handled with care. I just don't see how the Raiders work out this season. I think they could win more than 2 games this season. But I got them at 2-15 because their schedule isn't the easiest. They're playing in a pretty competitive conference and division. This defense doesn't look improved at all. I mean, did you even try? I like the signing of Duke Shelley. Duke Shelley was a really good pickup by the Las Vegas Raiders. But outside of that, who else did they sign in free agency that makes you go, oh yeah, like that was a great pickup by the Las Vegas Raiders? Honestly, Jacoby Myers, he's good, but were you really struggling at wide receiver prior to signing him? I don't really think wide receiver was that big of a hole for the Raiders. And then you bring in not just Duke Shelley, but you recently signed Marcus Peters in free agency. And Marcus Peters, you don't really know what to expect from him. He's an up and down player, but I'm going to give him the benefit of a doubt. But overall, at linebacker, outside of Divine Diablo, Robert Spillane, fam, I'm a Steelers fan, and I'm going to just give you the honest analysis about Robert Spillane. He's a solid tackler. I think he's good against the run, but against the pass, he brings you absolutely nothing in that department. Your pass rush is still going to be really good with Max Crosby. We'll see what happens with Chandler Jones this season. Is he going to decline? Tyree Wilson, I'm very excited to see what he does his rookie season. Jerry Tillery was a really good pickup during last season. He played really well for the Raiders, but this defense doesn't really look all that good on paper, and I don't think they're going to perform good when the season rolls around. This is just a defense that has a lot of question marks at linebacker, cornerback. Their offensive line has concerns. I mean, their best part of their team are their wide receivers and Devontae Adams, Jacoby Myers, and Hunter Renfrow, but we don't even know if Devontae Adams is going to remain a Raider around this time next year. So I got them at 2-15. I think they are a dumpster fire ready to happen. AFC South, last division in the AFC that we got to talk about. The Jaguars, I got them winning the division for the second consecutive year in a row. I think they are the most talented team in this division. I also think they are the most well-coached team in this division. And they got a young quarterback in ascension mode. And Trevor Lawrence, a.k.a. Sunshine, Sunshine. And the sun is about to shine bright on Trevor Lawrence this year, as many people, myself included, feel he's going to be in for a season that could see him be considered a top 5, maybe top 3 quarterback in the game. But even though Jacksonville has Trevor Lawrence, there's another player that I'm really hyped up about this season. And his name is Calvin Ridley. And Calvin Ridley has been getting a lot of love amongst NFL players and coaches. If you talk to any NFL player or coach and you ask them about their thoughts on Calvin Ridley, they're going to tell you either one or two things. Either he's a damn good wide receiver that's incredibly underrated, or he's one of the 5 best wide receivers in the game. And I'm not joking with the second statement. If you go and you watch the I Am Athlete episode that Devontae Adams and Brandon Marshall did, and Brandon Marshall asked Devontae Adams to rank his top 5 wide receivers, he had Calvin Ridley in his top 5. James Jones, in a recent appearance that he did on The Herd with Colin Cowherd, he called Calvin Ridley a top 5 wide receiver. So I'm really excited to see what Calvin Ridley and Trevor Lawrence do this season. This could be one of the best quarterback wide receiver duos in the NFL. Plus, they also got Christian Kirk, Zay Jones. You also got Evan Ingram at tight end, Travis Etienne at running back. We wonder how this offensive line is going to look. Your starting left tackle is going to miss the first 4 games. You're going to have a rookie right tackle starting. Your offensive guard position, you don't really know what you're going to get from that spot on the O-line. But your defense needs to step up. And if this defense can step up, I think the Jaguars could be a 12-win team. I don't know how this pass rush is going to look. You lost Arden Key to Tennessee. You do have Josh Allen, who is really productive. I don't know about Trayvon Walker. I think Trayvon Walker is one of the most important players to the Jacksonville Jaguars having success this year, because if he doesn't step up, who's going to be that other consistent pass rusher outside of Josh Allen to step up and get constant pressure on the quarterback? And if the Jaguars look to make a Super Bowl run this year, you got to have a consistent pass rush. The Bengals had Sam Hubbard and Trey Hendrickson. The Bengals also have DJ Reader on their defensive line. The Kansas City Chiefs have a really good pass rush. Same thing with the Eagles and the 49ers. When you look at the teams that go the furthest in the playoffs, it normally tends to be the teams that are really good when they can get pressure on the quarterback. And if they have 1 or 2 multiple good pass rushers. The Jaguars, we don't really know if they have that right now. Trayvon Walker, you're banking on the upside to hit with him. Still a lot that he has to prove. But I do think with Trevor Lawrence being in ascension mode, having the best QB plus the best head coach in this division, it's an easy pick for me taking the Jags to win the AFC South again. Tennessee, I got them at 7-10. I just don't think they got enough juice. And they could get to 8 wins. I did flirt with them winning potentially 8 games, but I can't see any more than 8 wins. This just is a team that's playing in a really tough conference with some of the best quarterbacks in the NFL. Their offensive line is really shaky. Yeah, DeAndre Hopkins makes your receiving core look a lot better with him and Treylon Burks. But even with DeAndre Hopkins, I don't know if this drastically makes this a playoff team. This defense is going to be really good. This is probably the most underrated defense entering this season. But I just don't think the Titans got enough juice to make a lot of noise this season, at least offensively. Now, this is going to be a scrappy team. You're never going to want to count them out because of Mike Vrabel being their head coach. And this is going to be a team that's going to pull off a couple of upsets here and there. But overall, I just don't know if the Tennessee Titans have enough talent to be able to finagle their way into the playoffs. When you look at some of the teams that have expected better records than Tennessee, they all have more talented rosters than Tennessee and better quarterbacks. So it's like, who are you going to put Tennessee in the playoffs over? Are you going to put them in the playoffs over a Denver Broncos team for that final spot, or the Pittsburgh Steelers with 11 or 10 wins? Don't know. Now, the Texans, Colts come in at 3-4 in this division. I think the Texans are being really overlooked. I don't think they are going to be a bad team this year. I think they're going to be a team that's going to be in the majority of every single game they play in. They're going to have a good amount of losses that come down to one possession. You're going to have some growing pains from C.J. Stroud. I think that DeMeco Ryans winning 6 games in his first season would kind of be viewed as an overachievement, considering that most people that I've seen give their record predictions about the Houston Texans have them winning 5 games or less. So 6-11 kind of is me being a little bit over generous when it comes to the Houston Texans. I think this is going to be a really good defense year one under DeMeco, Jalen Petrie, Derek Stingley, Will Anderson. You got some really good pickups in free agency. Denzel Perryman has played some of the best football of his career over the last couple of years in Vegas. You also do have Jimmy Ward, who is going to be a really good addition to the back end of that secondary. Him and Jalen Petrie could be one of the best safety tandems this year. Don't sleep on this Texans defense. And this offense is going to have some growing pains having a rookie QB, but I do like their offensive coordinator and Slowick, who comes from that Kyle Shanahan coaching tree. And so far, Kyle Shanahan hasn't really missed when it comes to guys who come from underneath him. So I think the Texans, 6-win team. Colts, I got them at 3-14. Even with the drama going on with Jonathan Taylor, I still don't think the Colts are going to be all that good this year. They're going to be a fun team to watch, though. Anytime you watch the Colts, you're going to have a lot of entertainment when you see Anthony Richardson making all these highlight reel runs and throws. And he's going to have a lot of moments where he shows everybody, yeah, like this is why the Colts took him 4th overall. But he also is going to have a lot of moments where he's going to show you why so many people were skeptical about him coming out of Florida. There's going to be some losses that the Colts are going to suffer because he ends up having a game-losing or game-sealing interception on the final drive of the game, or he just has some games where nothing gets going for him throwing the football. I think it's going to be one of those kinds of rookie seasons for Anthony Richardson. There's going to be some ups, and there's also going to be some downs. And there's probably going to be way more downs than there are highs when it comes to Anthony Richardson. But I still do think that there's going to be some games he's going to put together that are going to be really good, and the Colts are going to win those games. But I think with Anthony Richardson being so young and raw in his development, I think this is going to be a year that the Colts probably struggle. We don't know if that offensive line is going to bounce back. People keep saying this was an offensive line that was elite the season prior to last, but you don't know if some of these guys kind of regressed. And we don't even know how all these guys are going to play in Shane Steichen's system. I don't like their defense. Their secondary is a huge concern. A huge concern. So I got the Indianapolis Colts having the worst record in the AFC South this year. And these are my AFC record predictions. Let me know what you guys think about them. We're going to move on to the NFC conference. Now, the NFC, they don't have as many great quarterbacks compared to the AFC, but I do think that they have some really great teams top to bottom when you look at how their rosters are constructed. And I want to start off with the NFC. What is this? The NFC East? Yeah, this is the NFC East. So I got Philadelphia winning this division back-to-back once again. I know there hasn't been a repeat NFC East winner since a very long time. But when I look at the Philadelphia Eagles, right, even though they did lose 2 of their coordinators who are now head coaches, and Gannon, and you also do have Steichen with Indianapolis, I think that their replacements are going to be really good. And even though they did lose a couple of key guys in free agency, you got to remember that the Philadelphia Eagles draft very well. And their last 2 draft classes have been highly raved about. And most of those guys are going to end up seeing a lot of snaps this season. Guys like Jalen Carter, Nakobe Dean, Nolan Smith are going to be the guys who are going to have a considerable impact on the future of the Philadelphia Eagles in terms of where they're going to lie in the Super Bowl conversation for years to come. They also got Jalen Hurts, who is the best quarterback in this conference, without a doubt. There's no debate about it. And anytime you have the best quarterback, not only in the division, but in the conference as a whole, it gives you a pretty good chance at being able to have a lot of success. And although the Philadelphia Eagles schedule is tougher this season than what it was last year, they still have one of the best rosters top to bottom in the NFL. Best offensive line, best defensive line, really good secondary, great quarterback play, great receivers. This is just too talented of a football team for them to suffer from the Super Bowl hangover. I think that at worst, this is a 11-win team or better. Dallas comes in 10-7. You could make the argument for Dallas winning the NFC East over the Philadelphia Eagles. The fact that you haven't had a repeat division winner in some time, definitely you can see the argument for Dallas winning in that capacity. But Dallas roster is just as good as the Philadelphia Eagles roster. And Eagles fans may not want to admit that, but the Dallas Cowboys have arguably the most talented defense in the NFL entering this season. And they get rid of Kellen Moore, who many Cowboy fans will tell you he was a hindrance to this offense. Okay, cool. So Mike McCarthy takes over play calling. Now, it's been a while since we last saw Mike McCarthy calling the plays. Has he improved as a play caller prior to his stint calling the plays in Green Bay? Because we remember how that ended really ugly. What's going to be different about this offense? They want to put more emphasis on running the football, but you also are going to have a really good group of wide receivers for Dak Prescott to throw the football to, which is something that you didn't really have last year outside of CeeDee Lamb. So you trade for Brandon Cooks, who has been one of the most underrated wide receivers in the NFL for over a decade pretty much. He's been traded to a handful of teams, but it's not like this dude is a bad player. As a matter of fact, he is a really good player. I don't know why Brandon Cooks is just viewed as being a expendable option for his past teams that he's been on, but this dude is really good. And if you don't know how good Brandon Cooks is, you're about to find out this season, because you know if there's a good player on the Dallas Cowboys, people are going to talk about him. But if there's a good player on the Houston Texans, not too many people are going to know how good he is. And you got to remember that this was somebody who had a lot of success everywhere he's been. Rams, Saints, New England. You feel me? Brandon Cooks is a real dog. So I'm excited to see what he does in that Dallas Cowboys offense. How is Michael Gallup going to look? He didn't really look like the same receiver that he was prior to that injury that he suffered. So we're going to see how he looks with a added year and another offseason to recover and continue to fully get back to what he was before that injury. This defense is going to be fantastic. This offensive line should be really good. Dallas 10-7. The Washington Commanders 9-8. I think they are the most underrated team, the biggest sleeper team entering the upcoming NFL season. You got Airbnb, who should fix their problems with their offense. They got talent. I don't think talent is the problem with the Commanders offense. Curtis Samuel, Jahan Dotson, Terry McLaurin, that's your wide receiving core. I don't think if you're Sam Howell, you can ask for a better group of wide receivers to throw the ball to. Now, Airbnb was somebody who was underrated in terms of his impact on Kansas City's success. Now, how much of a factor was Airbnb in Kansas City's success? We don't know, but we are about to find out just how good of a play caller he is, because the question with Airbnb getting a head coaching job outside of the interviews is how much success was he responsible for when it came to how well that Kansas City Chiefs offense performed when he was on the staff. So this is his opportunity to prove to himself that he is a great offensive mind and that he has what it takes to be a head coach in the league. If the Washington Commanders offense ends up being successful this year, nobody can question who was responsible for its success, because he's going to be the guy calling the plays. This is his offense. So the Washington Commanders, I got them at 9-8. I think Sam Howell should be in for a breakout season. I love their defense. This is one of the most disrespected defenses in the NFL. Like, people forget that the Washington Commanders have two of the best defensive tackles, or two of the better defensive tackles in the NFL, and Jonathan Allen and Daron Payne, and nobody talks about that. We just skip over them and we talk about the Eagles and the Steelers and the 49ers, how much talent is on their defensive line, but we just seem to forget about Montez Sweat, Jonathan Allen, Daron Payne, and Chase Young down there in Washington. This is a great defense. This offense should at least be top 15 at worst under Airbnb. So I think they should be able to be a 9-win team and sneak into the postseason. You got to remember, they went 8-1 last season. So if they can do that, considering the fact that now they got a legitimate offense, I don't think there's any reason why Washington should have a losing record this year. Now the Giants come in 4th place in this division, 6-11. I don't believe, well, I'm not going to say I don't believe in Daniel Jones. I just think that he kind of gives me Blake Bortles vibes. You guys remember when the Jaguars had that Cinderella season and they had that great defense with Saxonville, Calais Campbell, Jalen Ramsey were the big names, and they nearly beat the Patriots in the AFC Conference Championship game that year? Well, they extended Blake Bortles after, and he pretty much wasn't good after that season. And I think Daniel Jones, although he is better than Blake Bortles, I'm not going to disrespect him like that. I don't think he's going to take all these big strides and steps in his development that many Giants fans are expecting him to take. I think that Daniel Jones is a solid quarterback. He's a solid game manager. But in big games against great teams, I don't know if he's going to be the guy to end up elevating your team over the top. And yes, he does have Darren Waller to throw the football to. He's going to have a better offensive line with the addition of drafting John Michael Schmitz out of Minnesota. But you look at the receiving core, it's still really questionable. Isaiah Hodgins, Darius Slayton, they're okay. I think they're wide receiver 3s on a championship team, but I think they're decent. Paris Campbell, I think that was one of the most overrated and overhyped free agency signings of the whole entire offseason. Like, there are Giants fans making it seem like Paris Campbell is about to go crazy when last year was the best season of his NFL career up to that point. He has struggled to stay on the field due to injuries, and he isn't really all that great. I think he's okay, but I don't think he's going to take the New York Giants offense to new heights. So the New York Giants, I think that with how tough their schedule is going to be this season, and given the fact that this team didn't really improve that much in the offseason, in my opinion, I think they take a step back this season. NFC West, this is my favorite division entering this season. I got the Seattle Seahawks winning it 12-5. Putting all my eggs in the basket on Geno Smith. Well, I got them at 12-5. They shouldn't be. Yeah, 12-5 is the right record for Seattle. 12-5, I got them tied with the Philadelphia Eagles for having one of the best records in the NFC. The 49ers got a really good team, and I don't think the Seahawks are going to win this division because the 49ers have concerns at QB. Like, I believe that the 49ers are fine with Purdy, Lance, Darnold, whoever they want to put back there underneath center. I think they're going to be fine. I just think that Seattle quietly has a better team overall than the San Francisco 49ers. And that's a hot take to a good amount of you guys listening to this live. But if you really look at Seattle's roster, top to bottom, not only are they just as talented as the 49ers, but I think they have more depth at several positions. Cornerback, you got Devon Witherspoon, Kobe Bryant, Tariq Woolen. Imagine if Devon Witherspoon ends up being as good as advertised. They're going to have 3 shutdown corners. Kobe Bryant in the slot. Tariq Woolen already was shut down. And then you got Devon Witherspoon. Where are you throwing the football, fam? And then let's not forget about Jamal Adams coming back when you already signed Julian Love. The Seattle Seahawks just have so much depth and talent. Oh, JT, is Jamal Adams going to be healthy? It doesn't matter. They got Julian Love. Well, what about the pass rush? Boye Mafe showed a lot of promise during his rookie season last year. He had 3.5 sacks. What about Uchenna Nwosu, who had 9.5 sacks, along with Darrell Taylor, who also had 9.5 sacks? You know, they had a really good free agency. They bring back Bobby Wagner, who never should have left in the first place, and he was really good for the LA Rams last season. As a matter of fact, outside of Aaron Donald and Jalen Ramsey, he was probably one of their key players on defense last season, one of their best players on defense. You bring in Jerron Reed, who is really good. Well, you already had him. I met Draymond Jones. Draymond Jones was a really underrated signing in free agency by the Seattle Seahawks. This is somebody who last year for the Denver Broncos had 6.5 sacks. And he's playing on the interior of the defensive line. Do you know how hard it is to find interior defensive linemen that can consistently give you 5-6 sacks a season, which may not be impressive from a stat sheet standpoint, but you don't find a lot of productive pass rushing defensive tackles as productive as Draymond Jones. And he's not a Quinnen Williams. He's not a Jeffrey Simmons. And he's not a Javon Hargrave of any or of the top interior defensive tackles in the game or interior defensive linemen, but he's really solid and really productive. So I think that Draymond Jones was a really underrated signing by the Seattle Seahawks. I love their team offensively at wide receiver. You're stacked. JSN out of Ohio State, fam? Are you kidding me? One of the best route runners coming out. This dude is Keenan Allen 2.0 to me, but way more athletic. And you are pairing him up with a already good receiver duo and Tyler Lockett and DK Metcalf. Who are you going to game plan for to slow down in the passing game? And what about Noah Fant at tight end? We forgot about him. Yeah, Seattle also came up on him in the Russell Wilson trade. The 49ers, I got them at 11-6. I don't think they are that far away from the talent that Seattle has. I think that the 49ers are just as good as Seattle when you compare their starters to each other, but I don't think they have more depth than the Seattle Seahawks. The Seattle Seahawks have depth everywhere. Offensive line, multiple guys who could be starters, multiple guys on the wide receiving core who could be starters elsewhere, a lot of depth at running back on the defensive line, multiple good pass rushers. I mean, there's just so much depth that the Seahawks have due to how well they've drafted. And I think that they have a better secondary than what the 49ers have going into this season. You lost Jimmy Ward. You got Hufanga back there at safety. But you still do have some concern there with who's going to be replacing Jimmy Ward. Cornerback. You know, I love Trevarius Ward. But DeAndre Lumador, I think he was a little bit rocky last season. So I like Seattle's roster more than I like the 49ers due to how much depth they have. If the 49ers have a couple of guys that go down, they may be in trouble. Seattle has a couple of injuries. They should be able to pick up from where they left off at. Now, the Rams, they're 6-11. And some people feel they could be a lot worse than this. But I'm not going to have the Rams in the tank bowl for Caleb Williams. Caleb Williams, I would love for him to go to Sean McVay. I would love for him to be a LA Ram. I think that would be a great pairing for Sean McVay and the Rams organization, giving him one of the greatest quarterback prospects to come out since Andrew Luck and Caleb Williams would be a crime if the NFL allowed that to happen. But the Rams, realistically, I don't think they're going to be bad enough to be in the tank conversation for Caleb Williams. And here's why. When you look at their roster, yeah, they are starting a lot of rookies, potentially, but some of those guys are probably going to pan out. They got a lot of rookies on their roster. You think with all the rookies they have, they're not going to have at least 4 or 5 guys who end up being solid options and being serviceable for them this season? And then you got Sean McVay, one of the best coaches in the NFL still. This dude was still finding ways to cook with Baker Mayfield. So I think when you have a great coach, even if he doesn't have a great team around him, he can still overachieve a little bit. You got Aaron Donald, Matthew Stafford, Cooper Kupp. So you got your main core of guys there. It's just, what about the other guys not involved in those big names that you currently have on your roster? What about Van Jefferson? Is he going to step up? Okay, there's just a lot of young players on this roster who have a lot of upside, but you're wondering if they're going to reach that potential. But with Sean McVay being their head coach, there's going to be some games that they end up escaping away with an upset win. And there's going to be some games that they end up winning against bad teams. They played the Arizona Cardinals 2 times this season. They should be able to beat them both times. So I think even though the Rams aren't going to have a great record, they're going to be amongst the bottom of the NFC in terms of record. I still think that they're going to be a respectable team. You shouldn't overlook them just because they don't have a great roster, because we know coaching means everything. And this is one of those teams that is being overlooked, but could easily surprise some people and make it into the playoffs as one of the last seeds in the NFC. Remember how people were writing off the New York Giants and the Seattle Seahawks around this same time last year, and you saw what they did. So there could be a way that maybe the Rams have a similar season to the Seahawks and what the New York Giants had last season. But I got them at 6-11. I got the Cardinals at 1-16. I think this is the worst team in the NFL this year, straight up. And the only reason I got them winning one game is because it's really hard to go 0-17. Like, you have to be historically bad to go winless throughout the whole entire season. And they will have Kyler Murray returning at some point this year. At least we expect him to return at some point. And I think with Kyler Murray coming back, they can at least win one game. I'll have a hard time seeing Arizona going winless with Kyler Murray being fully healthy back there at QB. But overall, this roster doesn't have too much. Offensive line, not good. Receiver, solid. Running back, okay. Defense, a lot of question marks. I don't know who the hell is going to be playing cornerback for them outside of Marco Wilson. Budda Baker, is he going to be traded at the trade deadline? What about the pass rush? Who's stepping up at pass rusher for the Arizona Cardinals last year? Like, did you know that J.J. Watt, as old as what he was last year in his final season, led the Arizona Cardinals in sacks last year? I'm not making that up. Seriously, J.J. Watt, as old as what he was, had one of the best seasons of his NFL career with the Arizona Cardinals last year, and nobody was really talking about it. He had 12.5 sacks last season, so who's going to step up and replace him? It's just a lot of holes that the Arizona Cardinals have in this roster. I think they're going to be the worst team in the NFL this season, without a question. Now, looking at the rest of the NFC North, I got the Detroit Lions winning it. With the 11-6 record, I think that they are the best team in that division. From a talent standpoint, I think they're going to be the most well-coached. I like their offensive coordinator. He probably is going to be a head coach next season. And then you got Jared Goff, who people really are overlooking. And it sounds weird to be saying that Jared Goff is being heavily overlooked. But let me ask you something. Can you name me another quarterback that had a 14-0 touchdown interception ratio to end the second half of last season other than Jared Goff? No, you can't. If this was any other quarterback, y'all would be hyping this dude up to win MVP. Jared Goff was a fringe top 10 quarterback last season, and it may be a little bit surprising to hear those words coming out my mouth, but he was really good last season, and not enough people are giving Jared Goff the respect he deserves going into this year. He's really good. They got a great offensive line. They're going to have a good offense with Jahmyr Gibbs at running back. The creativity with Ben Johnson at OC is going to be absolutely limitless. You can line Jahmyr Gibbs up, not just at running back, but in the slot, as a outside receiver. There's just so many different ways you can utilize Jahmyr Gibbs' skill set. And their defense should improve this year. They overhauled the secondary. Chauncey Gardner-Johnson wasn't really a big injury concern, even though he did go down with an injury scare early throughout training camp. You had a really good draft. Brian Branch, I was a really big fan of his. Jack Campbell out of Iowa should be the best rookie linebacker in the league this year. I like what they're going to have at their pass rushing positions with edge rushers James Houston and Aiden Hutchinson. So I love the Detroit Lions this year. I think they're going to live up to the hype and the expectations. I think they win the NFC North. I got the Vikings and the Bears tied for second place with 9-8 records. The Minnesota Vikings is not that I don't think they're a solid football team, and I'm not making this prediction solely based on what they did last year. As a matter of fact, if you guys have been listening to the podcast around that time last year, you guys will remember me picking the Minnesota Vikings to beat the Giants in the wild card round. I didn't think this team was having all their success due to miraculous fluke wins. Like, I thought that at one point Minnesota was a damn good football team. Like, if you do something once, okay, you can call it luck. But if you do something repeatedly over and over, time in and time out, consistently, then it's just a skill at that point. And the Minnesota Vikings were a really good team at winning close one-possession games, or games that came down to the wire where they had to win them in dramatic fashion. And I think this season, with Brian Flores as their defensive coordinator, their defense will be better than what it was last season. Now, how much better? We don't know, because we don't know if Brian Flores has all the guys necessary to run the kind of defensive system that he wants to run. And he's very aggressive, which is completely opposite from what you got from your former defensive coordinator and Ed Donatel, who was really conservative. And when you're running an aggressive defense like Brian Flores, a lot of cover zero, cover one, man-to-man coverage looks, you're going to have some plays where you just get beat. Somebody gets beat and somebody ends up flying wide open. You got nobody in the center of the field to stop the play from resulting in a touchdown. That's just what's going to happen with this Minnesota Vikings defense. It's going to be high risk, high reward kind of defense where Brian Flores calling the plays. I like Kirk Cousins, especially after watching the Netflix quarterback documentary series. I like him even more. Tough quarterback, really underrated leader, really resilient, I love Kirk Cousins. And I think this season, he should still play at the level that he did last year with Kevin O'Connell still being the head coach. You got Jordan Addison at wide receiver replacing Adam Thielen. I like their offensive line when it comes to a run blocking standpoint. I don't know how I feel about it in pass protection, because after watching that Netflix documentary series and all the times that Kirk Cousins was getting hit and thrown around like a rag doll, don't know how great that offensive line is going to be this season. But Alexander Mattison, potential breakout player to watch. If you play fantasy football, target him in all your drafts, because he is going to be the full workhorse RB1 in this offense with Dalvin Cook being gone. He's a monster. So I got the Vikings at 9-8, Bears 9-8 also. I'm a big believer in Justin Fields. He currently is my favorite player in the NFL. And I believe that he's going to have that breakthrough season that many people are expecting him to have. And it seems like people are split on Justin Fields. You either feel one or two ways about Justin Fields. You feel like he's a bust, he can't throw the football, he's not going to work out, or you think that he's going to be in for a Jalen Hurts kind of ascension this season. And if Justin Fields plays well, the Bears should be a playoff team. But if he struggles, this team could be really bad. But overall, when you look at the Justin Fields situation, he's going into this season with more to work with. DJ Moore, proven, productive, number one wide receiver. You're going to have a healthy Darnell Mooney. That is a really good number two option. Cole Kmet really turned things on during the second half of last year. And even though you did lose David Montgomery to the Lions in free agency, you got Khalil Herbert and Roschon Johnson and Dante Foreman also. So there's a lot of talent at running back. There's a lot of talent on offense for Justin Fields to work with. Even though we don't know who's going to be the wide receiver 3, I don't think it really matters all that much with how good DJ Moore and Darnell Mooney should be. The offensive line should take some step up and improvement. You got Darnell Wright, who you used your first round pick on out of Tennessee. He was my number 1 rated tackle coming out of this past year's draft. You also got another good tackle on the opposite side of him. Your offensive line should be better this season than what it was in 2022. It was absolutely abysmal. Now, this defense, though, I like the secondary, right? They got a really nice secondary. Jalen Johnson, one of the most underrated cornerbacks in the NFL. You look at the fact that Jaquan Brisker was the best rookie safety in the NFL last year in most people's opinions, even though I will have to go with Jalen Petrie, but he's a dog. He's going to be somebody who could be a potential Pro Bowler. Eddie Jackson, yes, he's still around. He's still playing. He's not playing at the level that he used to play at, but he's still really productive. I think he's still one of the better safeties in the league, and he quietly had 4 interceptions last year. Nobody talked about it, but he had 4 picks, which was the most interceptions that he had in a single season since his All-Pro season with the Bears in 2018. So I like their secondary. I like their safety position. I'm a big fan of Tyreek Stevenson, a little bit biased because I'm a Hurricanes fan. You got Kyler Gordon, slot cornerback. He was really good. I'm excited about the additions of TJ Edwards and Tremaine Edmonds. You signed them in free agency. They're going to improve your linebacker position. But I don't know about the pass rush. And the pass rush really turns me off when looking at the Chicago Bears going into this year. And last year, they tried everything to get the pass rush going, but it just wasn't working. And I don't really think their pass rush is all that improved. Although I am going to keep my eyes on DeMarcus Walker, not because he's from the city of the 904, but also because when you look at DeMarcus Walker, this could be somebody who kind of has some untapped potential that has yet to be tapped into. This is somebody who has been viewed as more of a rotational pass rusher. But last year with the Tennessee Titans, he broke out and had 7 sacks. So I think he could be somebody who the Bears are looking at to step up and be their number 1 pass rusher this year, but we'll wait and see. And in last place in the NFC North, I got the Green Bay Packers. The Packers don't have a bad roster. I just think that the Packers, you're banking on Jordan Love being the guy. And I think that Jordan Love isn't going to be good, but I don't think he's going to be bad neither. I think he's going to be in the middle of the pack. And I think he's going to have a tendency of being turnover prone. And the reason why I say that is because if you watch him in the preseason, he didn't really do a good job taking care of the football. And when you watch his last regular season matchup against the Philadelphia Eagles, he played well in that game. But I think he has the tendency to force throws that shouldn't be made and try to force them into tight coverage. I also think that this is somebody that's still trying to get acclimated to being a starting quarterback in the NFL. And this kind of is like his rookie season in a sense, because this is his first full season where he's going to be the starter for the whole entire 17-game regular season. Now, I like the situation that he has around him. Christian Watson, Romeo Doubs, Jaden Reed, that's a really good receiving core. They got a really good offensive line. You know what to expect from Aaron Jones and A.J. Dillon in the run game. How's this defense going to look with Joe Burrow being the defensive coordinator still? A lot of Packers fans don't like Joe Burrow. They think that he should have been fired last year. Don't know why he was brought back, but okay, I guess Green Bay feels that, you know, Joe Burrow didn't really have all his guys last year. You got to remember that at one point, Rashawn Gary could have been in the conversation for winning Defensive Player of the Year. And he got injured midway through the year, and the Packers defense couldn't stop the run to save their lives. So how improved is the run defense going to be this year? Kevontae Wyatt, does he take that next step in development? Lucas Van Ness, what are you going to be getting from him in his rookie season? We know about Kenny Clark, but, you know, you need that run defense to improve, and I just don't really have a lot of confidence in the defense. So I think the Packers are going to be the worst team in the NFC North this year. NFC South, you know, I think the Packers being the worst team in the North, if you were to put them in the NFC South, I think they win this division easily. But you look at the Carolina Panthers, though, 9-8, this is the team that I'm rocking with to win the NFC South this year. You got the best coaching staff in this division. Frank Wright, he's a proven head coach, has a winning record, has a playoff appearance, something that no other coach in this division has, and only one other head coach in this division has a winning record on their resume, and that's Todd Bowles. But that was with the New York Jets a long time ago. And we saw how the Buccaneers looked with Tom Brady last year. They nearly made it to the playoffs and won this division. So the Panthers, having the best head coach in this division, I think gives them a big advantage versus teams like the Saints and, you know, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, where their head coaches, you don't really know what to expect from them. They're not really good. They don't really have anything that shows you that they have what it takes to be coaches that can lead your team to a division title and even a playoff berth. The Atlanta Falcons, I got them at 7-10. They're really interesting. Now, I think the Falcons have a really good chance at winning this division. And I got more confidence in the Falcons winning this division than I do the New Orleans Saints. I don't like the New Orleans Saints this year. I love Derek Carr. I think they got a solid roster, but I think Dennis Allen is going to ultimately hold that team back. And for all the Saints fans who are going to disagree with me about Dennis Allen, let's not act like Sean Payton went 9-8 his final season in New Orleans with several different quarterbacks and hella injuries himself. He had Marquez Callaway being his most productive receiver that year in 2021. So don't give me those bullshit excuses for Dennis Allen. Stop making these excuses. If Sean Payton is coaching the New Orleans Saints in 2022, this is a playoff team. If he was their head coach going into this season, shoot, I might as well call them a dark horse Super Bowl contender. But I'm just not a big believer in Dennis Allen, which is why I got them at 6-11. The Atlanta Falcons coming in at 7-10. What are you going to get out of Desmond Ridder? Because Falcons fans are basically giving a lot of assumptions that they're going to be able to run and ground and pound their way into the playoffs. And they're not going to need Desmond Ridder to do that much. And it sounds good. It sounds easier said than done. But you're not going to be able to completely go through a 17-game regular season asking your quarterback to just be a game manager. There are going to be some games where Desmond Ridder is going to have to throw the football to win. And I think in those situations, the Falcons are going to come up short. I just don't know how good Desmond Ridder is as a QB right now. I wasn't really impressed in the small sample size that we saw of him last season. But we'll see. But I got the Falcons at 7-10. I think they got a solid offense. But I really just don't like their defense, man. And a lot of Falcons fans are excited about what this defense can potentially be with a new defensive coordinator. All the new players that they brought in. David Onyemata, Jeff Okudah. But you look at Jeff Okudah, he's a rehabilitation project. You know, this was somebody who was a high draft pick by the Detroit Lions and wasn't able to live up to that potential. Will he be able to live up to those expectations and get able to, get his career on track with the Atlanta Falcons? I don't know. And Jeff Okudah, he's not a bad cornerback. He's just highly inconsistent. During the first half of last season, he was fantastic. We forget that he clamped up Justin Jefferson. Yes, Jeff Okudah, out of all corners, clamped up Jay Jettis. And then in the second half, after he came back from that injury, he just wasn't the same. So maybe the Falcons can untap some of that potential out of Jeff Okudah. I don't know. We'll see. So I got the Carolina Panthers going 9-8, winning the NFC South. I got the Falcons at 7-10, second place. Saints at 6-11, and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers at 5-12. So these are my NFC record predictions for the 2023 NFL season. Let me know your thoughts on these down in the comment section down below. Before I get to my playoff seedings and who I have making it to the playoffs, who I have winning the Super Bowl, if you haven't already and you are enjoying this episode of the JT Sports Podcast, leave a like, subscribe to the channel. Remember that we go live every day, Monday through Friday, 5 p.m. Eastern Time. This podcast isn't just available on YouTube. You can find us on all podcasting platforms, wherever you get your podcast from. Apple, Google, Spotify, Amazon. You can find the JT Sports Podcast on all podcasting platforms. Leave us with a 5-star review if you haven't already. We're trying to get to 100 5-star reviews before the start of the upcoming NFL season kicks off. So go ahead, rate us 5 stars. All you got to do is go to the description down below, scroll down a little bit, and there will be the links to Apple and Spotify versions of the podcast. Let's check in on the chat. Skanazy says, hey JT, how's it going, brother? Going pretty good over here, man. Brandon Tillman says, what up, JT? We have to wait after the preseason because we will not expect big name get cut, trade from the team. They saying Chase Young just might go to the Ravens. Is this live? Yes, it is. This is live. Roman Miller. Mr. Jones says Titans are winning the AFC South. D-Hop, Traylon Burks, Derrick Henry, this guy. All right, Mr. Jones, you saying this. Make sure you're around here around the end of the regular season. I'm eager to see what your thoughts are going to be if Tennessee doesn't win the AFC South this year. I'm eager to see. Because you're one of the few people that I see on here that consistently say that the Titans are going to overachieve and win the AFC South division. So we'll see. It's just, I got a hard time seeing it. I think they got a bad offensive line. You don't really know how great Ryan Tannehill is going to be in a conference full of elite QBs. And I just think that Tennessee needs a little bit more to be able to make it out of the AFC South this year. Now, we're moving on to my playoff predictions. I want to show you guys the teams that I have in the playoffs. All right, let's see. AFC playoff predictions. These are my predictions for the teams that are going to be in the playoffs for the AFC conference. I got the Ravens having the #1 overall seed. I think they're going to have the best record in the NFL with 14 wins this year. You got Lamar Jackson, LaMarvelous. This is the best supporting cast that he's ever had, and this is the best receiving core that the Ravens have probably ever had. Hell, signing OBJ was big for the Ravens. The last time the Ravens signed the wide receiver that had the kind of name recognition of OBJ was Steve Smith years ago on the tail end of his career when he was departing from the Carolina Panthers. You look at Lamar Jackson, this is somebody who wins over 70% of his games as a starter when he's healthy. And the last 2 seasons before he has went down and missed a large stretch of the second half of the season, the Ravens were in the conversation for having the #1 seed. So when he's healthy, they normally are one of the best teams in this conference. I think they are going to win the AFC North, and they're going to have the best overall record in the NFL and in the AFC. The Dolphins are coming in at #2. I have them winning the AFC East, They were tied with a 13-4 record with the New York Jets, but I got the Dolphins winning the tiebreaker. The Dolphins are a really interesting team. If Tua stays healthy, they got a dangerous group of wide receivers, a lot of speed, Tyreek Hill, Jalen Waddle. You love what they have on the defensive side of things. You hire Vic Fangio as your defensive coordinator, one of the biggest offseason acquisitions, not just when it comes to coaching hires and staff hires, but also player acquisitions as well. A lot of general managers and a lot of people inside of NFL front offices are really high on the Miami Dolphins hiring Vic Fangio as their DC. Really good. Kansas City, I got them with the 3rd seed in the AFC. You know, they're not going to be bad. It's just that the Ravens and Dolphins, I just think, are going to have better records than the Kansas City Chiefs. And I think that this is going to be the first time that we see Patrick Mahomes maybe have to play in the AFC Championship game in the stadium outside of Arrowhead. Something that we haven't seen him do in ever since he came into the league and took over as Kansas City's starting QB. I don't think Patrick Mahomes has ever played in a playoff game away from Arrowhead. Got them at #3. Jags, they win the AFC South, so of course they're going to get the last home field advantage spot for the wild card round. Got them at #4. The Jets come in at #5. I had them with a 13-4 record like the Miami Dolphins. It just came down to the tiebreaker. So the Dolphins won the coin flip, which was the tiebreaker, which is why I have them with the 2nd overall seed, because they had the same record. So I just flipped the coin and it landed on the Dolphins having the 2 seed and winning their division because they had similar records. So went with the Dolphins because they won the coin flip. But the New York Jets are a team that they could definitely have a 2020 Tampa Bay Buccaneers-esque season. This kind of has a lot of similarities to how the Tom Brady and Tampa Bay Buccaneers situation went down when they won that Super Bowl. You know, you had concerns about if Tom Brady was going to be able to get the chemistry and timing down pat with his teammates, given the fact that you had the COVID-19 virus spreading around. So You know, everything was limited to the practice sessions that you had, and being around people with social distancing was kind of a little bit of a factor that made things a little bit difficult for Tom Brady. But overall, even though the Buccaneers had their lumps and bruises throughout that season, they won the Super Bowl. And you look at the New York Jets, they potentially have a team that's just as good as what that Tampa Bay Buccaneers team was. We forget this was a top 3 defense last year. They didn't really have too many games where they didn't show up to play. And this is with them having to carry a team that had a bad offense. Now, they're going to have respectable quarterback play. You're going to be able to look at Aaron Rodgers and say, you know, he may not be what he used to be, but he's going to be better than what we've had from this position over the last couple of years. I got the Bengals coming in with the 6th seed and the Bills getting into the playoffs with the 7th seed. Now, the Bengals, I have them for 12-5 record. I think they're going to start this season a little bit slow. You got the calf strain injury to Joe Burrow. He is a player that kind of starts the season out a little bit slow, and then he gets hot as we progress throughout the season. And with Joe Burrow, this is another offseason where he doesn't really have all the time necessary to develop timing and rapport with his receivers in training camp. Even though he already has good chemistry with them, you know, you just want to get that going early in training camp, so when you get into the regular season, you don't got to spend the first month or so trying to get that chemistry and timing back. So for Joe Burrow, I think the Bengals and him get out to a slow start, but ultimately they make it into the playoffs. And I think the Bills, they're going to have a really good record. It's just that the AFC is so tough this year. I mean, you could be 11, 12-win team and get the 7th seed. That's just how tough this conference is. And you could be a 10, 11-win team and be on the outside looking in of the playoffs because there was a team that had 12 wins and got that 7th seed, like the Buffalo Bills I have doing in my prediction. So these are my AFC playoff predictions. I'm not going to go game by game. I just want to show you guys all 7 AFC playoff teams that I have. This is what I really care about more than the record prediction. The record predictions are nice, but let's be honest, most of these teams aren't going to have any record close to what I have them predicted as. So I really just care more about getting the playoff teams right versus the prediction. Still put a lot of time and effort into it, but I really care more about the playoff predictions being right versus the actual record predictions being right. So don't really care about the record, only care about getting the playoff teams right more. NFC. When you look at the NFC playoff, right? Well, the NFC conference, excuse me. The Philadelphia Eagles, I think they're going to have the number 1 seed. All right. I think they are going to be the best team in the NFC still. And even though they're going to be at 12 wins, I think it's going to be due to how difficult their schedule is. Now, that doesn't mean I don't think they're a great team. You can be a great team and still have a couple of losses here and there. But I look at Philadelphia. This team has the best quarterback in the conference, and they have the best overall team in this conference. So I'm taking them to have the 1 seed. I think the Seattle Seahawks are going to come in at number 2. They're going to win the NFC West division over the 49ers. I think a lot of people are overlooking the Seattle Seahawks when it comes to them being legitimate Super Bowl contenders. They got the best young roster in the NFL coming into this year. You got Geno Smith, and despite how well Geno Smith played, there are still people writing off Geno Smith. Do you guys think Geno Smith is going to write back to those people, though, that are still doubting him? I doubt it, but I'm not doubting Geno Smith. I believe in Geno Smith. I believe that he can play at an MVP caliber level. There's way too much talent on this Seattle Seahawks offense for Geno Smith to hold this team back. For the people who say, man, Seattle ain't going to be this good because they got Geno Smith. So you're telling me you think the 49ers have a better shot than the Seattle Seahawks? Have you not seen their quarterback position? Got a lot of confidence in Brock Purdy, but I mean, if you're going to have criticism about Geno Smith, you got to have that same energy for the 49ers. Detroit Lions, I have them with the 3rd seed in the NFC playoffs. Now, the Detroit Lions, they're going to have a really good squad. This is the best Lions team that we've seen in a very long time, since Barry Sanders? And this is the most excited that Detroit Lions fans have been to start the season. I think this defense is going to be dramatically improved. They're going to have a fantastic offense, especially with Jameson Williams being fully healthy by this point and being on the field, not having to worry about missing time due to gambling suspensions or whatever. So this Lions team is going to be very dangerous, especially when we enter the playoff time or the playoff season. Carolina Panthers, 4th seed, got them at 9-8. They're going to win the NFC South. I feel strongly about that. If you were to ask me, JT, out of all the teams that you have listed 1 through 4 in the NFC playoff rankings or standings, who do you have the most confidence is going to be able to win their division? I got the Carolina Panthers, and that may sound crazy, but I got more confidence in them winning the NFC South than I do the Eagles winning their division and the Seahawks and the Lions winning theirs, because those divisions aren't as bad as the NFC South. The NFC South has some of the worst head coaches in the league. They got mid teams. I don't think they're bad teams, but they got mid teams that if a couple of things go right, they could be a playoff team. But I think the Panthers having the best coach with the most experience and the better resume of proven success with the young rookie QB and Bryce Young, who is really good at processing and reading defenses. I think that is a formula for the Carolina Panthers winning this division and making it to the playoffs. My last 3 NFC playoff participants. I got the 49ers at number 5. Like I said earlier, I think that Seattle's roster is slightly better because they got more depth at a couple of positions such as running back, receiver, pass rusher, secondary. I mean, the Seattle Seahawks are loaded all the way around. Dallas, 6th seed, Washington, 7th seed. The Dallas Cowboys, they're one of the best teams in the NFL going into this year. It's just that, Philadelphia already have them winning the division. So I can't go with the Dallas Cowboys having a higher seed because 1 through 4 goes to the division winners. So since I got Philly winning, I got them with the 6th seed, but they also could win this division and possibly they could be in the running for the number 1 overall seed in the NFC, but I got them at the 6th seed. And then I got Washington at 7, which is going to surprise a lot of people. And I think that the Washington Commanders are being heavily slept on. I'm going to say it for the final time. Really do some digging into the Washington Commanders roster, because this is a better roster than what a lot of people give them credit for. You got great receivers, Terry McLaurin. You got Jahan Dotson, arguably the best rookie wide receiver last year before he had to miss time due to injuries. And then you got a really good pass rush, multiple guys who can get pressure on the quarterback. When you got a team that has a solid pass rush along with a great defense, more times than not, they're going to keep you competitive in the majority of games that you play in. The Commanders went 8-1, having really below average or average quarterback play at best, and that was from Taylor Heineke. Carson Wentz, when he was in there, he was a disaster. Prior to, outside of his first couple of games with the Commanders, he wasn't good. So Taylor Heineke had this team at 8-1, and along with Sam Howell. So if they can do that with not so great offense and having a bad offensive coordinator, imagine what they're going to do with Eric Bieniemy taking over the helm at OC for Washington. And I think he's going to be a big reason why Sam Howell has a breakout season and why the Commanders get to the playoffs, because the only thing that this team is really missing is offense. And if they can have a above average offense with how good their defense normally performs under Ron Rivera, I don't see how the Commanders don't make it into the postseason. Now, these are my Super Bowl predictions. I got the Seattle Seahawks taking on the Cincinnati Bengals, and I'm rolling with the Bengals to win it all this year. I think that the Cincinnati Bengals, bringing back both of their coordinators who very well could have been head coaches, that's big. Joe Burrow, he's been to the AFC Championship 2 straight times in a row since his second year. He won one of them, lost to the Rams in the Super Bowl, and then lost to Kansas City last year in a really close game. I think this year, the Bengals can finally get over the hump with everything that they have coming back on the coaching staff, how good their team is. Your offensive line is the best that it's been ever since you drafted Joe Burrow, with you signing left tackle Orlando Brown. Yeah, there's some skepticism about how the secondary is going to look, but I'm not too worried. They do draft pretty well. I'm a big believer in Dax Hill. This dude is incredibly athletic. This dude has great change of direction. He's also a really physical player, good football IQ. I think the Bengals have all the talent that they need to be able to win the Super Bowl this year. You're going to have a good pass rush with Trey Hendrickson and Sam Hubbard, DJ Reader on the interior of that defensive line. Chidobe Awuzie is coming back fully healthy. He was having a all-pro caliber season last year. Cam Taylor-Britt, he should end up having a really good second season. He was really good throughout the playoffs in the games that he started in for the Cincinnati Bengals against the Bills and the Chiefs. So I think the Bengals are going to win it all this year. The Cincinnati Bengals are my Super Bowl prediction, or my pick to win the Super Bowl this year. And I want to get into my awards prediction. Okay, because we got to talk about the award predictions for the upcoming 2023 NFL season. Who do I have winning MVP, Offensive Player of the Year, Defensive Player of the Year, Rookie of the Year on offense and defense, Coach of the Year, Comeback Player of the Year award, and my Most Improved Player. Now, I'm going to start off with picking John Harbaugh to win Coach of the Year. Now, you guys already know, if you guys have been watching this up to this point, that I got the Ravens having the best record in the NFL this season. And with them having the best record in the NFL this season, there's no reason why John Harbaugh shouldn't win Coach of the Year if that doesn't happen. He's going to have the best team in the league. He's going to have Lamar Jackson as his QB. There's no reason he's not going to win this award if the Ravens end up being as good as what I have them predicted to be. Devon Witherspoon is my selection to win Defensive Rookie of the Year. I think this dude is a stud corner. I don't think he's going to have a Sauce Gardner-like rookie season. I don't think he's going to be as good as what he was last year, but I do think he's going to be a couple notches below him in terms of how well he's going to play this year for Seattle in year one. You already got Tyreek Woolen, who is shut down on one end. And if Devon Witherspoon ends up being locked down on the other side of the field, who is Seattle going to throw the football to? He has great ball skills. He's a really physical player, and he's one of the few cornerbacks that you will actually see be willing to tackle. Like, Devon Witherspoon actually tackles people. If he doesn't work out at corner, you could easily try him out at safety, because he has a skill set that allows him to have versatility playing both cornerback and safety, with how well he is at being able to tackle and how high his football IQ is. He just has really good instincts, and he just has a knack for knowing what receivers are trying to do. He is really aggressive, and his aggressiveness can get the best of him at times. But overall, I think Devon Witherspoon should have a phenomenal rookie season. I'm going with Bryce Young to win Offensive Rookie of the Year. It was either him, Bijan Robinson, or Anthony Richardson. I'm going with Bryce Young because he's going to be the quarterback to have the most success this season, in my opinion. I think he's going to be able to get the Carolina Panthers to the playoffs, playing in a weak division. And Bryce Young has been really solid up to this point throughout training camp. He should have a really good preseason. He has an offensive-minded head coach in Frank Wright. And what stood out about Bryce Young the most for me when he was coming out of Alabama was his ability to read and dissect defenses. Like, this dude's football IQ is out of this world. Playing against Bryce Young is playing against the AI computer in Madden. That's how high his football intellect is. And I'm a little biased towards Bryce Young, just a tad bit. But if Bryce Young doesn't win it, I could have went with Bijan. But I think Bryce Young is going to win it because he's going to have the playoff success that I'm expecting. And plus, I think if you have to think about what his rookie numbers are going to look like, I'll say he'll probably throw 27 touchdowns and 9 interceptions, which I think will be really good for a rookie season, considering the fact that most rookies, you don't often see a rookie have a single-digit interception number. So that's how different I think Bryce Young is. And people say, well, Bryce Young was 6'2", 215. He'll be seen as a generational prospect. Newsflash, I've rated and said Bryce Young is a generational prospect ever since we started talking about this past year's draft. So Bryce Young is going to be that dude. Like I said, if he doesn't win it, I feel like Bijan's going to get it or Anthony Richardson, but he's my pick just because I think he's going to be the most successful during his rookie season amongst the other year one QBs. TJ Watt, I have him winning Defensive Player of the Year. He missed a large portion of last season, but when he came back and he was fully healthy, you saw how tremendously he elevated the Pittsburgh Steelers defense. And let's not forget that Alex Highsmith had 14 sacks last season. So now you got to worry about TJ Watt and Alex Highsmith. And TJ Watt has arguably been the most dominant player on the defensive side of the football outside of Aaron Donald. Honestly, I mean, outside of Aaron Donald, you can make the argument that TJ Watt is the best player on the defensive side of football in the NFL. So I'm picking him to win Defensive Player of the Year. Offensive Player of the Year, I'm going to go with CMC. CMC, when he got traded to the San Francisco 49ers, I mean, this dude just elevated into a different bag. And we knew that Christian McCaffrey was a phenomenal running back and how talented he was, but in that Kyle Shanahan offense, oh my God, he looked all world in Kyle Shanahan's offense. And I think this year, with him having a full off season to learn the playbook, he's more acclimated to the playbook and the calls, has a better understanding of the offense, and I think Kyle Shanahan is going to get even more creative with Christian McCaffrey, with him having a better understanding of the playbook. So I think Christian McCaffrey could have one of those seasons where he has like 2,000 total yards from scrimmage. He has like 1,500 rushing yards, over 500, 400 receiving yards. Like, I think Christian McCaffrey is just going to be one of the best players in the NFL this year. Not one of the best running backs in the NFL, not one of the best offensive players in the NFL. I want you guys to make sure you hear me when I say this. I think Chris McCaffrey is going to be one of the best football players in the NFL this year. Like, he absolutely elevated that San Francisco 49ers running game once he arrived in San Fran. MVP, I gotta go with Lamarvelous. I'm going with Lamar to win NFL MVP this year. I think he's going to win his second MVP with all the talent he has around him. Zay Flowers, OBJ, Rashad Bateman, Isaiah Likely, Mark Andrews. There's just way too much talent for Lamar Jackson to not put up an MVP caliber season if he's healthy. You got Todd Monken, who is a upgrade from Greg Roman at offensive coordinator. You're going to have somebody who's going to specialize in getting the most out of the passing attack. And you look at Todd Monken, this isn't just a good college coach. He was also a really good OC when he was calling plays during Dirk Cutter's final season as the head coach for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Todd Monken's lone season calling plays for the Buccaneers, you know how good this offense was? They had the number one passing attack in the NFL with Ryan Fitzpatrick and Jameis Winston. So you look at what he can do with Lamar Jackson. We already know how scary Lamar is as a runner. But when Lamar Jackson is also killing it as a passer, he's probably the toughest quarterback to stop. Tougher than Mahomes. And I know that's going to ruffle a few feathers, but be honest. Who's more scarier to play defense against when they're playing at their best? Lamar Jackson or Patrick Mahomes? Like, Patrick Mahomes is hard to stop, but Lamar Jackson pretty much is a glitch. Not only is he an insane athlete, but as a passer, he's way better than what people give him credit for. And what has held his passing production back has been Greg Roman, which is why they made the switch from him to Todd Monken. I think Lamar Jackson, with how great of a dual threat he is, coupled with the fact that he has a great supporting cast and a good offensive coordinator in Todd Monken, equals MVP number 2 for Lamar Jackson, aka Lamarvelous. Comeback Player of the Year and Most Improved Player are my final 2 predictions. Comeback Player of the Year, I'm going with Calvin Ridley. A lot of y'all are really sleeping on Calvin Ridley, and I love it. Keep sleeping on Calvin Ridley because I'm going to continue to draft him in all of my fantasy football leagues. There has not been a single draft that I participated in where I didn't come away with Calvin Ridley. And if you talk to any current NFL wide receiver and you ask them to name their top 5 or top 10 wide receivers, the majority of them are going to have Calvin Ridley in their top 5. Devontae Adams, on an episode of I Am Athlete with Brandon Marshall, ranked Calvin Ridley in his top 5. James Jones, former Green Bay Packers wide receiver, also considered Calvin Ridley a top 5 wide receiver. This dude has great hands. He's one of the best route runners in the league. He's him. He's a dog. And if you don't think that Calvin Ridley is going to be a top 5 receiver for the Jacksonville Jaguars, I can get it. Okay, it is pretty bold, but you need to go watch some film and some tape on Calvin Ridley. I think people forget how good Calvin Ridley was when he was playing at his peak level with the Atlanta Falcons. I mean, he is a dude, and he's somebody that still has kind of yet to break out yet. Like, he had a breakthrough season, but I don't feel like people know about Calvin Ridley and how good he is on the national level. Last player who I have winning my award for Most Improved Player is Sam Howell. Airbnb being his offensive coordinator is a huge reason why I'm high on the Sam Howell hype train. And prior to, his final season at North Carolina, he was expected to be a first-round pick. He was expected to go either first or second overall behind Spencer Rattler. Now, the reason why his draft stock plummeted was due to UNC just not having a good overall team around them. They had lost a lot of veteran players from the season prior. So Sam Howell had to run a lot more than what he did seasons prior to his final season at Chapel Hill. But he is a really good athlete, a really underrated athlete. Looking at a guy like Sam Howell, you wouldn't think that he's as athletic as what he is, but he's really athletic, has a really strong arm. Like, the Washington Commanders got to still drafting him in the middle portions of last year's draft because this was somebody who was formerly a first-round pick and still has the talent that comes with being a first-round pick. It's just that he wasn't a first-round pick. So you look at his arm strength, really good, above-average athlete, and all he really needs is a good offensive coordinator and a good group of wide receivers to throw the football to, and he does have that. And Airbnb, Jahan Dotson, Terry McLaurin, Curtis Samuel, like, I'm really high on Sam Howell. I think he's going to be the most improved player in the NFL this season. This is it for my 2023-2024 NFL record predictions. Let me know what you guys think about these down in the comment section down below. And I appreciate you guys for listening to this very long episode of the JT Sports Podcast. I know we got started a little bit later than what I expected to, but that was due to me having to make all these graphics. I promise from this point forward, at least until I leave for school on the 17th, we will be going live 5 p.m. Eastern time every day, or around 5 p.m. every single day. I got a new microphone. Don't know if you guys checked it out, but I'm really looking forward to hearing the new improved sound quality on it. I'm taking that a lot of you guys really like the new microphone because we had a lot of people tuned into this live stream who didn't leave out. There was at one point 10 people in this live stream. So I'm loving this new microphone. Can't wait to hear the audio quality. And I appreciate you guys for tuning in to this episode of the JT Sports Podcast. Remember that you can listen to the audio version of this podcast available on all podcasting platforms: Apple, Google, Spotify, Amazon, wherever you get your podcast from. You can find the JT Sports Podcast. If you enjoyed today's episode, please, I'm begging you, give us a 5-star review. Apple or Spotify. We're trying to get to 100 5-star reviews before the season begins. We're a lot closer on Apple than we are Spotify, so go ahead, give us a 5-star review on Apple. All you got to do is go to Apple Podcasts, type in the JT Sports Podcast, and it will pop up. Or you can go down to the description down below, and it will pop up. Follow me on all of my social media platforms. Instagram at JT Sports _, Twitter at JT Sports __. Even though it's called X, I'm still going to call it Twitter. And this is it for this episode of the JT Sports Podcast. I appreciate you guys for tuning in, and I will see you guys tomorrow with another episode of the JT Sports Podcast.